Hey everyone, welcome to today's Python lesson where today I'm going to show you guys lists. So for starters, let's create a variable and let's call it list_1. And to make it a list, you need the square brackets, and I'm going to use strings, which are basically just going to be characters for this instance, and I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, and F. Each of these will be an element, and you break it up by having the commas. An element will be starting with the assigned value of 0. So A is 0, B is 1, C is 2, all the way up to F. And it's kind of odd that how it starts with 0, but it's just important to keep that in mind. And I'm going to show you guys the enumerate feature, which kind of just shows and symbolizes the variables or the elements in the list, as well as the elements that they are assigned to. So if I do enumerate the list, and I'm going to have that equal to enumerate in calling the list, for I in enumerate, so I'm going to loop through each element in the list and print out I. When I run the program, you'll see that each element, A through F, is assigned a value. So A is 0. If I want to print out the list element 3, it would be D. So it's just nice seeing the assigned value for each of these strings in this list. So if I print, like I said, if I do print, we can just randomly select one. Let's say we want to call list_1. When we want to assign something, we have to use square brackets too. So if I do print list square brackets 0 and run the code, it'll print out A. If I do 1, it'll print out B, etc. Since we're only calling out the element that we are wanting to signify. Now, if I do 6, obviously there is no 6 as you see, because it goes all the way up to 5, which is F. You'll get an error message where there's an index error that the list index is out of range. Let's see, is there any other things we can do? If we do a single semicolon, it'll print out everything. And you can also specify with like 2 semicolons and 2 at the end, which would skip by 2. If I do 2 semicolon 5, it'll print out the element that starts with 2 all the way up to 5, not including 5. So that's why we see C, D, and E, not F, because C assigned the value of 2. If I do 2 semicolons and then a value, it'll print out everything and skip each element by 2, which is basically stating like a start, a semicolon, which is the first one, stop, which is what we want to stop to, not including that element, and then skipping by how much. So if I do 2, we'll start at C. Well, let's make it better. Let's start at B, just so we have more options. Semicolon. So we're going to start at B. We're going to stop at 5, which is F, but not including F. And then we want to skip by 2. So when we run this, it'll go B, D, and that's it. There's other things we can do where we can print out the list, and we can just show you guys some neat things we can utilize to manipulate the list. So if I do list dot, it shows a whole list of things that you can utilize. So if I do list1 dot append, this is basically adding anything that you want to the end of the list. So I'm going to add G, and when I run the list, you see G is added to the end of the list. I could also do count, where I can count how many of elements there are. So if I want to count how many E's there are, this isn't as unique as ones where there's duplicates. So when I run this, it didn't seem to work. Oh, I had to assign it a variable, which is why it didn't work. So if I assign a value of variable num and print num, you'll see that there's only 1 E. It's more useful when you have like a bunch of numbers and you want to see the maximum number of numbers or a particular number or letter in a word. You could also do list.pop, which will remove the last element in your list. So when I run this, it'll print out everything except for the last element. So it will remove F. I also do .clear, and when I run this, it's going to clear everything. So it's actually just going to print out just open and close square brackets. I could do dot remove. It's similar to dot pop. However, I can specify where or what element I want to have removed. So if I specify I want to remove D and I run the code, you see that D is no longer in the list. I could also do dot insert. So it takes two objects. First, what you want to insert, and then the location. Oh, did it backwards. So it's first the location, which is the element you want to install it in, and then the value that you want to install. So if I assign 2, it's going to shift C, which is currently 2, to the right and drop the Z string into the list. And I can also do, I'm going to send the value or variable list2, and that's going to be equal to list1.copy. So it's going to be an identical list to list1. So when I print out list2, you see it's going to be exactly the same. However, there's things that you could utilize where if I want to manipulate list2, it won't affect list1, which is nice because you're not affecting the original list. So if I print out both lists, and you see the only difference will be appending the letter G to list2, you see that we are not going to be altering list1 at all. I could also loop through each of these elements, and I kind of showed you guys that already when doing the enumerate feature. But if I do for letter in list1, letter will be considered each element. So if I just print out letter, it's going to loop through one at a time. So when I run this, it'll print out and loop through A, print A, loop through it again, and then go to the next element, which is B, etc., until it reaches the end of the list. So as you see, each row is printing out an individual element. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson on lists. Make sure to like and subscribe for more programming tips and lessons.